I wasn't looking for anything important when I found the letters. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head, how random it was. I was just trying to fix a loose hinge in the hallway cabinet. The kind of chore you put off for months. My wife had been asking me to deal with it, joking that one day the whole door would fall off and take the wall with it. So I emptied the cabinet. Old batteries, expired medicine, a flashlight that didn't work. And then there was a small wooden box at the very back. I had never seen it before. It wasn't locked. Just hidden. I remember calling out her name casually, like, "Hey, what's this?" No answer. She was upstairs on a work call. So I opened it. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life, about her, started to fall apart. At first, I didn't even understand what I was reading. But I kept reading anyway. That was my first mistake. The letters were old. Not just a few years old, I'm talking a decade, maybe more. The paper had that slight yellow tint, like it had been handled too many times. Folded and unfolded. Some of them had creases that looked permanent. They were all addressed to her. Not by her full name, though. Just the nickname I used to call her when we first started dating. No one else used that name. No one. That's when I felt something shift in my stomach. I sat down right there on the floor and started reading properly. The first letter was intimate. Not sexual, but deeply emotional. The kind of writing you only send to someone you're completely in love with. The writer talked about missing her, about counting days, about what we promised each other. That phrase stuck with me. What we promised each other. I didn't remember any "we" before me. We'd been married for 12 years. Together for almost 15. I thought I knew her entire history. Apparently I didn't. Before all this, my life was normal. Boring, even. And I mean that in a good way. We had routines. Coffee together in the mornings. Arguing about what to watch at night. Grocery shopping on Sundays like clockwork. We weren't one of those overly romantic couples, but there was comfort. Stability. I trusted her completely. Never checked her phone. Never questioned where she was. If she said she was working late, I believed her without a second thought. People always say trust is fragile, but mine wasn't. It was solid. Built over years. Or at least I thought it was. Looking back, there were things I ignored. Moments where she seemed distant. Times she would go quiet when certain topics came up. Her past, old relationships, anything before we met. I assumed she just didn't like talking about it. We all have things we'd rather leave behind, right? That's what I told myself. Now I wonder if those weren't just preferences. Maybe they were warnings that I kept reading. Letter after letter. They weren't just love notes. They told a story. A relationship that lasted years. Deep, complicated, intense. The kind of connection that doesn't just disappear. There were references to arguments, breakups, getting back together. Promises to do things differently this time. And then something else started to appear in the later letters. Apologies. Not the casual kind. The desperate kind. I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't mean to hurt you like that. I thought I could fix it. Fix what? That question started echoing in my head. Then I saw a date. One of the letters was written just months before I met her. Months. Not years. Not some distant past. Right before me. That's when the unease turned into something sharper. Because it didn't feel like a closed chapter anymore. It felt unfinished. Like something had been left hanging. And I was standing in the middle of it without even knowing. The turning point wasn't one letter. It was one sentence. Buried halfway through a page, written like it was nothing. I still think about that night and what it cost us. That night. What did that even mean? I started flipping through the letters faster, scanning instead of reading. Looking for context. And I found it. Different letter. Same handwriting. You said you couldn't forgive me after the betrayal. Betrayal. My chest actually tightened when I read that word. Because suddenly this wasn't just some old love story. There was something darker here. Something unresolved. And then the worst part. There were no letters from her. Only his. Every single one was from him. Which meant I was only seeing half the story. And somehow, that made it worse. Because whatever she had done, it was bad enough to break him. And she never told me. I didn't confront her right away. I wish I could say I did, but I didn't. Instead, I put everything back exactly as I found it. Closed the box. Slid it into the cabinet. Pretended nothing happened. That night, we sat on the couch like always. She leaned against me while we watched some dumb show. And I couldn't focus on anything except the fact that I didn't know who she really was. I kept looking at her, wondering. Who were you back then? What did you do? And why did you hide it? At one point she laughed at something on TV and looked up at me. You okay? She asked. And I said, yeah. Just like that. Like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. Because for the first time in 15 years, I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of. I went back to the box. But this time, I took pictures of the letters. All of them. I told myself it was just to understand better. To piece things together. But really, I think I was afraid the truth would disappear if I didn't hold on to it. I read them again later, alone. Slower this time. That's when I noticed something I missed before. A name. It wasn't mentioned often, but it was there. And I recognized it immediately. Because it wasn't just some random guy. It was someone I had met. Years ago. Briefly. At a party early in our relationship. She introduced him as an old friend. I remember thinking he seemed off. Like he didn't want to be there. Now I know why. Because he wasn't just an old friend. He was something much more. That realization hit harder than anything else so far. Because it meant she hadn't just hidden her past. She had rewritten it. I started replaying that night in my head. The way they barely spoke to each other. The tension I couldn't explain back then. The quick introduction. The way she moved us away from him, almost immediately. At the time, I didn't question it. Now it felt staged. Like she was managing the situation. Controlling what I saw. That's when suspicion turned into something heavier. Doubt. Not just about the past, but about everything. How much of our relationship was real? How much was built on things she chose not to tell me? And then another thought crept in. Something I didn't want to consider. What if it didn't end back then? What if it wasn't just history? That idea sat in my chest like a weight. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about old letters. It was about now. I finally confronted her 2 days later. I couldn't hold it in anymore. We were in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic. Just ordinary. And I said it straight. I found the letters. She froze. Not confusion. Not surprise. Recognition. That was the worst part. She knew exactly what I was talking about. What letters? She asked anyway. And I just looked at her. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then I said his name. And everything changed. Her face dropped. Like something inside her just gave up. She sat down slowly, like her legs couldn't hold her. And whispered, You weren't supposed to find those. Not. That's not what you think. Not. It's nothing. Just that. You weren't supposed to find them. The conversation that followed didn't feel real. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. She told me they had been together for years. On and off. Before me. But also, overlapping with me. That's when my head started spinning. What do you mean overlapping? I asked. And she hesitated. Too long. I didn't end things cleanly, she said. That's how she put it. Like it was some minor mistake. I pressed harder. And then it came out. She had still been seeing him when we started dating. 4 months. maybe longer. I don't even remember exactly what she said after that. Because everything got loud in my head. 15 years together. And it started with a lie. I wish I could say I reacted calmly. I didn't. I got angry. Not the kind of anger where you throw things or scream until your voice gives out. It was worse than that. It was quiet. Focused. Controlled. The kind of anger that feels like it's sitting behind your eyes, watching everything, calculating every word. I asked questions. Too many questions. The kind you shouldn't ask if you want to keep your sanity intact. How many times did you see him while we were together? Did you tell him about me? Did you sleep with him after you told me you loved me? Each question felt like I was digging deeper into something I didn't actually want to uncover, but I couldn't stop. It was like scratching at a wound just to see how deep it really goes. She cried. Of course she did. At first quietly, then uncontrollably. She kept saying she was sorry. That she was young and confused. That she didn't know how to end things properly. That she never meant to hurt me. But every apology sounded incomplete. Like it was missing something essential. I chose you, she said over and over again, like that was supposed to fix everything. Like that was the part that mattered most. And maybe to her, it did. But to me, it just raised more questions. If she chose me, why didn't she choose me from the beginning? Why did I have to share that space with someone else without even knowing it? I realized in that moment that we had been living in two completely different versions of the same story. In mine, we met, we connected, we built something honest from the start. In hers, there was overlap. Confusion. Deception. A gradual transition from one person to another. And the worst part? She let me believe my version for 15 years. That's what broke something in me. Not just the betrayal itself, but the fact that my reality, the foundation of my relationship, had been quietly edited without my consent. The emotional fallout didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly, like water through cracks you didn't even know were there. That night I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed everything she told me, mixing it with memories I used to cherish. Moments that once felt warm now felt tainted. Our first date. I remember how nervous I was. How I thought she was out of my league. How she smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. Now all I could think was, had she seen him the day before? Had she texted him after she got home from that date with me? Was I just an option at that point? The thoughts wouldn't stop. I got up around 3 a.m. and just sat in the kitchen in the dark. No lights, no phone, nothing. Just silence and this overwhelming sense that something fundamental had shifted inside me. She came downstairs at some point. I don't know how long she had been awake. She stood there for a while before saying anything. I didn't mean for this to happen like this, she said softly. And I remember thinking, of course you didn't. You meant for me to never know. That thought hit harder than anything else. Because it reframed everything. This wasn't just a past mistake. This was something she actively chose to hide. Every single day. For years. Every anniversary. Every remember when we first met conversation. Every time we told our story to someone else. She let me repeat a version of events that wasn't true. And I believed it completely. That's the part that made me feel stupid. Not just hurt, but embarrassed. Like I had been the only one fully invested in something real, while she had been quietly carrying this other truth the entire time. The consequences didn't arrive with some dramatic explosion. There was no single moment where everything collapsed. Instead, it was quieter than that. More subtle. And in some ways, more damaging. We stopped touching. Not intentionally. There was no agreement or conversation about it. It just faded. Where she used to lean against me on the couch, she now sat with a small gap between us. Where I used to reach for her hand without thinking, I now hesitated. Every physical interaction suddenly felt loaded. Like there was something unspoken sitting between us, watching. Even conversations changed. We used to talk about everything, random thoughts, work frustrations, stupid things we saw online. Now everything felt filtered. Careful. Measured. Like we were both trying not to step on something fragile that could shatter at any moment. And maybe we were. I started pulling away emotionally too. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't feel safe anymore. That's the only way I can describe it. Before, she was the person I trusted most in the world. The one I could be completely open with, without hesitation. Now there was this constant voice in the back of my head asking, "What else don't you know?" That question never really went away. Even when things felt almost normal for a moment, it would creep back in. She noticed, of course. She's not stupid. She asked me one night, "Do you still love me?" And I didn't know how to answer. Because the honest truth was, I didn't know. Not in the same way, at least thought we didn't separate. At least, not in the way people usually mean. No bags packed. No dramatic exits. No final goodbye. On the outside, our life looks almost exactly the same. We still wake up in the same bed. Still go through the same routines. Still attend family events, smile at friends, act like everything is fine. But internally? Something fundamental is gone. It's like we're maintaining the structure of a house that's already been hollowed out. Sometimes I catch her watching me. Not in a casual way, but like she's studying me. Waiting. For a sign, maybe. A shift. A softening. Something that tells her we're going to be okay. And I hate that I can't give her that. I see the guilt in her. The regret. And part of me understands it. Even feels sympathy. But another part of me keeps asking, where was all of this 15 years ago? Why now? Why only after the truth is out? We tried therapy. Sat in a room with a stranger and unpacked things I never thought we'd have to unpack. Talked about trust. About honesty. About rebuilding. I said the right things. She said the right things. But it all felt distant. Like we were discussing someone else's relationship instead of our own. Because deep down, I think I already knew something I didn't want to admit out loud. You can't rebuild something when the foundation itself was never what you thought it was. I think what stays with me the most isn't the details. Not how many times it happened. Not the exact timeline. Not even the fact that there was another person. It's the realization that the story I built my life around wasn't entirely real. For years I told myself we had this simple, honest beginning. Two people meeting at the right time. Choosing each other. Building something solid from day one. That belief shaped everything. How I saw her. How I saw us. How I trusted. And now? Now that belief is gone. Replaced by something uncertain. Something fractured. I find myself questioning things I never questioned before. Not just about her, but about my own judgment. How did I not see it? Were there signs I ignored? Or was I just too willing to believe in the version of reality that made me feel secure? That's the part one can't shake. Because it doesn't just change how I see her. It changes how I see myself. We're still here. Still together. Still functioning in this strange, quiet version of what we used to be. But it feels like we're living in the aftermath of something neither of us fully understands. And I don't know if there's a way forward. Or if this is just what's left. All I know is this. Some truths don't just hurt. They rewrite everything. And once you see them, really see them, you don't get to go back to who you were before.